You are sitting in a parking lot at 2 in the morning and you cannot make yourself go inside. The store is right there. Fluorescent lights humming through the glass, empty aisles, one bored cashier scrolling a phone. Nothing threatening, nothing dangerous. And yet, you are in the car, engine idling, trying to figure out why your body has decided that walking through those automatic doors is somehow a problem worth solving later. You tell yourself you are tired. You tell yourself you will go tomorrow. You drive home, and on the way home, you tell yourself you are fine. You are not fine, but not for the reason you think. Your body just made a decision before you did. And here's the part nobody tells you. It does that constantly, every hour of every day. A vast, silent system running underneath your conscious mind, making calls, filing reports, flagging threats, and handing your rational brain a story that sounds like a reason but is actually a verdict that was already reached. You are not the judge in this courtroom. You are the clerk. Your job is to write down what the judge decided and make it sound like deliberation. This is the thing about hypervigilance that the clinical language completely fails to capture. Hypervigilance is not anxiety. It is not nervousness. It is not being a worrier or being sensitive or needing to relax. It is a surveillance system. A sophisticated, highly calibrated, genuinely impressive piece of biological engineering that was built for an environment you may or may not still be living in. It runs continuously. It never sleeps. And unlike most systems in your body, it does not send you a warning before it acts. It acts. Then it sends you the story. Think about what a radar installation does. It does not wait for you to ask whether there are threats. It is scanning all the time. It is painting a picture of everything in the airspace, flagging anything that moves wrong, calculating trajectories you did not ask it to calculate, and raising the alarm before any human in the building has had their morning coffee. That is your nervous system. That is what is sitting inside you right now, reading the room, reading this situation, reading the people around you, reading the angle of a stranger's shoulders from across a parking lot, and making a threat assessment you will never consciously process. The radar does not turn off because the war ended. The radar does not turn off because you moved. The radar does not turn off because you decided intellectually that you are safe. The radar turns off when it believes you are safe. That is a completely different thing. And here's where the science starts to matter. In the early 1990s, a researcher named Stephen Porges was developing what he called polyvagal theory, a framework for understanding how the autonomic nervous system responds to threat and safety. The short version, the version that actually lands when you are sitting in a dark parking lot, is this: your nervous system does not have an on and off switch. It has a hierarchy, a layered set of responses, each one deeper and older than the last. At the top, when everything is fine, you are social, connected, relaxed, able to think. In the middle, when something feels off, you mobilize. Heart rate climbs, attention narrows, you are ready to move. At the bottom, when the system decides the situation is beyond fighting or fleeing, you go somewhere else entirely. You shut down. You go still. You dissociate from the moment and wait. What hypervigilance does is collapse the distance between those states. In a nervous system that has been trained, by genuine threat, the gap between relaxed and mobilized gets very small. It does not take much to cross it. A tone of voice, a look that lasts a half second too long, a change in a room that nobody else noticed because nobody else was scanning. Your system crosses the threshold before your conscious mind has finished registering that something changed, and by the time you are aware of feeling tense, the verdict is already in and your body is already acting on it. This is why you are exhausted in a way that sleep does not fix. Running a radar installation at full capacity around the clock burns fuel. It keeps your system in a mild but constant state of readiness that costs something every hour. You go to sleep tired and you wake up tired because your system did not stop working while you were unconscious. It never stops, because at some point, stopping felt like dying. Now here's the part that gets complicated. Because you are smart, and you have probably already thought about this, and you have probably already arrived at the conclusion that the hypervigilance is irrational, that the threats are not real, that you are safe now, or safer, or at least not in the specific danger that caused this. And you are right. Cognitively, rationally, in the part of your brain that processes language and logic and calendar dates, you are completely right. The problem is that you are trying to talk to a system that does not speak that language. You can be 100% intellectually certain that a spider on the other side of a glass tank cannot hurt you, and your palm will still sweat when you hold the tank. Your certainty and your nervous system's assessment are two completely separate things, and your certainty does not win by default. The radar was not installed by your thoughts. It was installed by your experience, and it will not be uninstalled by your thoughts either. That is not a hopeless thing to say. That is a precise thing to say, because precision matters when you are trying to work with a system instead of fighting it. You cannot argue your nervous system into safety, but you can teach it. Slowly, repeatedly, with evidence it actually accepts rather than evidence that only makes sense to the part of you that reads and thinks and plans. The system learns from experience. It was written by experience, and experience is something you can influence. But before you get there, you need to understand what the system is actually doing, not what it feels like from the inside, which is often shame and confusion and the low hum of something being wrong with you. What it is actually doing, mechanically, in your body. Because the parking lot at 2 in the morning is not a malfunction. It is a field report. Your system looked at the information available and made a call. The call may have been wrong, but it was not random. It was not weakness. It was a system built for survival doing exactly what survival systems do. The question is not why you are like this. The question is what you do next. The system did not build itself overnight. That is the first thing you need to understand. Whatever is running in you right now, the scanning, the exhaustion, the way a certain tone of voice can move you from calm to ready in under a second, that did not arrive fully formed. It was constructed. Piece by piece, experience by experience, your nervous system took notes and rewrote its own thresholds based on what it kept encountering. It is not broken. It is educated. The education was just brutal. Here is the mechanism, and this part matters, so stay with it. Your brain has a structure called the amygdala. 2 of them actually, one on each side, almond-shaped, buried deep in the oldest part of your brain. The amygdala does not think. It pattern matches. It holds a library of every experience your body has flagged as significant, and it runs every incoming moment against that library at a speed that makes conscious thought look like it is moving through wet concrete. Before you have processed what you are seeing, the amygdala has already checked it against everything you have ever survived, issued a threat rating, and begun mobilizing resources accordingly. This happens in milliseconds. Your awareness of what is happening shows up later, wearing the costume of a feeling, and you call it intuition or anxiety or a bad vibe, depending on what kind of vocabulary you have for it. In a nervous system that has not been through sustained threat, this system runs quietly in the background. The library is relatively thin. Most entries are tagged low risk. The amygdala checks, finds nothing alarming, and lets the moment pass without comment. You do not notice this happening because nothing gets flagged. It is a librarian who keeps finding the book in the right place and putting it back without a word. In a nervous system that has been through sustained threat, the library is different. It is thick. It is annotated, and a significant portion of it is flagged with warnings that do not have expiration dates. The librarian is not slow. The librarian is fast and thorough and deeply committed to making sure you never get caught off guard the way you were caught off guard before. The librarian is trying to protect you. The librarian is also at this point flagging things that do not need to be flagged, because the pattern matching is running on old data and the world has changed in ways the library has not yet recorded. This is called sensitization. Your threat detection system has been calibrated by repetition to fire earlier, faster, and more intensely than it would need to in a genuinely safe environment. Researchers studying post-traumatic stress have found that the brains of people who have experienced sustained threat show measurably increased amygdala reactivity to stimuli that non-traumatized brains process as neutral. The amygdala fires, the body mobilizes, and then the conscious mind arrives on the scene, looks around, finds no actual threat, and concludes that something is wrong with you for reacting this way. Nothing is wrong with you. Your calibration is off. That is a different problem, and it has different solutions. The solutions do not start with thinking harder. This is where most people waste enormous amounts of time and energy because thinking is the tool you are most comfortable with, and you will reach for a familiar tool even when it is the wrong one for the job. You cannot recalibrate a thermostat by explaining to it that the room is warm. You have to change what the thermostat is sensing. You have to change the inputs. What your nervous system is sensing constantly is the state of your body. This is the part that most people have completely backwards. You do not feel calm, and then your body relaxes. Your body relaxes, and then you feel calm. The signal runs bottom up, from the body to the brain, far more powerfully than it runs top down, from the brain to the body. Your thoughts can influence your physiology, but slowly, weakly, against considerable resistance. Your physiology influences your perception of the world almost instantly and almost completely. Stephen Porges, whose work on the autonomic nervous system changed how researchers think about trauma and safety, spent years making this case. The nervous system is constantly reading what he calls neuroception, a word he coined for the process by which your body detects safety or danger below the level of conscious awareness. Neuroception is not thought. It is sensation. It reads the tension in your muscles. It reads the rhythm of your breath. It reads the rate of your heartbeat and the quality of the sounds around you and the micro-expressions on the faces of people nearby. And it uses all of that data to decide continuously whether to keep the alarm running, which means you have more access to that system than you think. Not through your thoughts, through your body, through breath specifically, which is the one autonomic process you can control consciously and which has a direct line into the system that is running the alarm. A slow exhale, longer than the inhale, activates the vagus nerve, which runs from your brainstem down through your chest and abdomen, and which is the primary highway of the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of you responsible for telling the body it can stand down. You breathe out slowly, and you are sending a signal through hardware so old it predates language, telling the system that the moment is survivable. You are updating the sensor data. The librarian gets a new entry. Nothing happened. We were okay. This is not deep breathing in the way a wellness app tells you to deep breathe. This is physiology. It works whether you believe in it or not, the same way aspirin works whether you believe in aspirin. The mechanism does not care about your skepticism. It just runs. But breathing is only the entry point. Because the bigger project, the recalibration that actually reduces the baseline, requires something the nervous system finds far more compelling than breath. It requires evidence. Repeated, accumulated bodily evidence that specific environments, specific people, specific moments are safe. Not intellectually safe. Not rationally safe. Safe in the way your system understands safety, which means nothing bad happened and your body registered that fact and the library got updated. This is why the same person can feel completely calm in one environment and completely activated in another that looks, to an outside observer, identical. The library does not organize by logic. It organizes by experience. And experience is highly specific. You build safety the way you build anything real. Slowly. With repetition. With attention to what is actually happening in your body rather than what you think should be happening in your body. The gap between those two things is where most of the suffering lives. What you think should be happening. What is actually happening? You think you should be fine. You are not fine. And the distance between those 2 points feels like failure, but it is just information. The system is telling you where the calibration still needs work. The system is in its blunt and exhausting way, still trying to help you. The radar does not flag things at random. It flags things that look like what hurt you. Your job now is not to silence the radar. Your job is to help it learn the difference between then and now. That is slower work than you want it to be. It is also the only work that actually changes anything. So here's where you actually are. Not where you think you should be. Not where someone else decided you ought to be by now. Here, in the specific and unglamorous present, where the radar is still running, the library is still thick with old annotations, and you are trying to figure out what to do with a system that was built for a world you may no longer be living in. This is not a bad place to start. This is, in fact, the only place you can start. You work with what is real. The recalibration is not an event. Get that out of your head right now. There is no session, no conversation, no single moment of clarity where the system resets and you walk out into the afternoon feeling like a person who was never taught to be afraid. That is not how nervous systems work. That is a story people tell because the truth is less dramatic and requires more patience than most people want to commit to. The truth is that recalibration is accumulation, small deposits, repeated evidence. The library gets new entries slowly, and the new entries do not erase the old ones, but they begin to outnumber them, and over time the pattern matching starts landing differently because the patterns themselves have changed. You are updating a database. That is the work. Unglamorous, incremental, and completely worth doing. Here's what the deposits look like in practice. Your body is in a situation it has historically flagged as dangerous. A crowd, a conflict, a silence that lasted too long. The alarm fires. You feel it. And instead of either white-knuckling through the moment while pretending nothing is happening or leaving the situation entirely and confirming to your system that the threat was real and escape was the correct response, you do something different. You stay. You breathe. You let your exhale run longer than your inhale, and you keep your feet on the ground, and you let the wave move through you without acting on it. And then nothing bad happens, and your body registers that fact. A new entry goes into the library. We were activated. We stayed. Nothing happened. We were okay. That entry is small. One data point does not shift a calibration that was built over years, but you do it again and again, and the deposits accumulate. And 6 months from now, in a situation that would have floored you before, you notice the alarm fires a little quieter. A little later, you have a half second more between the signal and the reaction, and in that half second, you have choice. That half second is everything. That half second is the whole project. Bessel van der Kolk, a psychiatrist who spent decades working with trauma survivors and wrote at length about how traumatic experience lives in the body rather than just the mind, made the case that recovery is fundamentally about reclaiming the present moment, not processing the past, not understanding it, not achieving insight about it, though those things have their place, but teaching the body that the present moment is distinct from the past, that now is not then, that the body, which has been running on old recordings, can learn to read the current room instead of just the archived one. The body learns through experience, repeated, present, physical experience. This is why movement matters, specifically intentional physical activity that requires you to be in your body rather than observing it from a slight distance. Exercise is not self-care in the soft sense. It is direct intervention in the nervous system. Physical exertion burns off the mobilization energy that threat detection generates, completes the cycle that the body started when it prepared you to fight or flee, and sends the system a clear signal that the resources it marshaled were used and the moment is over. You are not carrying the activation forward into the next hour. You discharged it. The body gets to reset. This is also why stillness is so hard when you are activated, and why people with high baseline vigilance often feel better when they are moving, and worse when they are forced to sit and be quiet. The system mobilized. It wants the mobilization to mean something. It wants to run or fight or climb. When you sit still and try to meditate your way through that energy, you are asking the body to do something profoundly counterintuitive. Sometimes that works. Often it does not. Moving first and then finding stillness on the other side of the exertion is frequently more accessible and more effective. But here's the piece that most people skip because it is the most uncomfortable and it requires other people, and other people are frequently the original source of the problem. Safety, real neurological safety of the kind that actually lowers a baseline, is almost impossible to build alone. Your nervous system co-regulates. This is not a metaphor. It is a biological function. You read the physiological state of the people around you through their voices, their faces, their posture, their breathing rate, and their nervous systems talk to yours below the level of language. A calm nervous system in close proximity genuinely measurably influences the state of an activated one. This is why a specific person can walk into a room and you feel your shoulders drop without understanding why. Their system is broadcasting safety and yours is receiving it. This means the people you spend time with are not just emotionally important. They are physiologically influential. The person who is chronically activated, unpredictable, running their own high-alert system does not just feel exhausting to be around. They are keeping your alarm running, not intentionally. Their system is simply broadcasting what it knows, and your system is listening. You cannot fully recalibrate in an environment that keeps feeding the old data into the sensor. This is a hard thing to sit with, because sometimes the environment that keeps feeding the old data is not easy to change. Sometimes it is a job, or a family, or a housing situation, or a geography that carries its own weight. You work with what is real. You make the changes that are available to you, and you work steadily toward the ones that are not yet available. You do not wait until conditions are perfect to begin. Conditions will not be perfect. You begin now with what you have in the specific and unglamorous present, and you extend some of the accuracy you have learned to apply to your system toward yourself. The radar was not a flaw, it was a construction, built by experience, maintained by repetition, and entirely capable of being updated by the same process that built it. You were not born scanning. You learned to scan because scanning kept you safer than not scanning at a time when safety was genuinely in question. That time may have passed. The library does not know that yet. You are in the process of telling it. The parking lot at 2 in the morning, the one you drove away from, is not evidence that something in you is permanently broken. It is a field report from a system that is still running the old map. Your job is not to force yourself through every parking lot through sheer will until you have proven something. Your job is to slowly, persistently, with the kind of patience you would extend to any system that needed time to update, build a new map, one entry at a time, one moment at a time, one exhale at a time. The radar does not get retired, it gets recalibrated, and a well-calibrated radar, one that fires when there is genuine cause and rests when there is not a liability. It is exactly what it was always meant to be. The thing that keeps you alive, doing its job, finally working for you instead of against you. You were never the problem. The settings were off. And settings, with enough time and enough evidence and enough stubbornness, can be changed.